So today I'm going to talk about the data resolution workflow feature in REDCap. I don't know if Terry's covered this before in training, and there's also an external module that adds a little bit of functionality to it that I'm going to talk about as well. So when you have a project and you enter data into the project, by default, let me go to a record here. By default, REDCap gives you these comment buttons, this comment log. So if anything changes, sorry, that's for the history, but for the comment log, you can add your own comments to values if you need to just have additional information for a value. But that's the default behavior with REDCap. It also gives you, it's one of the additional customizations. It's called data resolution workflow, which allows you more, instead of just adding a comment like, hey, check this out, or, you know, whatever, it basically creates a workflow for you to document and verify values in your project. And you can assign these issues. Basically, it opens up a data query for somebody to adjudicate values in REDCap and say whether or not this value is correct and that somebody's done the due diligence to look it up and resolve that issue, or that the data was incorrect and you may need to figure out you know, how to fix that. So if we go back to the project setup and we go to additional customizations, you'll see here that by default, the field comment log is enabled here. And this is saying, do you want to enable the field comment log or data resolution workflow? And this is where you would get information about the data resolution workflow, kind of explained a little bit. There's also a video that from Vanderbilt it's about a 5-minute video that explains what I'm going to talk about today. And down here is the drop down where you get to select whether you want, if you don't want the comment log, you can turn it off. If you want the comment log, or if you want data resolution workflow. So this is where you would enable the data resolution workflow. So I'm going to select that. Now that I've selected that, this checkbox doesn't apply anymore, so it grays out. And you want to make sure this is checked. And I'm going to save it now. And then once you save it, REDCap walks you through the next steps for you. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to set user privileges, because there are multiple privileges that you can either give somebody access to create these data queries, to open queries, to resolve queries, to close queries, those kinds of things, or just not have access at all. And then the next thing I'm going to talk to you about is actually opening a query and fixing data and that kind of thing, how to respond and close data queries, and then using the resolve issues page, and then viewing resolution metrics. So I'm not going to go through all of this, because if you guys want to read it on your own time, you can. You guys probably don't want to sit here and listen to me read it when I can just show you how this stuff works. So now that I've enabled the data resolution workflow, I have this resolve issues, which I'll go into later. This is just another tab that pops up with the data quality. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to user rights, because now I have to set who actually has permissions to run these data queries. So I'm the only person on this project, so I'm just going to edit it. And you'll see here that you have these new options under data resolution workflow. So right now I'm set to no access. And there's view only, there's open queries only. So this would be something like if somebody's a data entry person and they don't have the permission levels in the project, or, you know, in their institution to answer these questions of, like, they just say that they just know that something's wrong and they want to mark something to be run up the chain for their administrator to look at. So they would only be able to open queries, to respond to open queries, and then open and respond. So this may be somebody who's like mid-level management that just their sole job is to just fix data. They just respond to the data. They don't open the queries. Somebody who's like a PI or something like that may be able to open and respond to queries. And then somebody, you can give them access to being able to open, close, and respond to queries. So I'm just going to set myself as this so I can show you everything. But you have some granularity here, which is nice because depending on how big your project is and how your team is organized, you can have people who only have certain jobs instead of just giving it, everybody be able to do everything. So now I'm going to save that. And if we go back to a record here, now nothing looks different here. It's still the same bubble, but now when I hover over it, instead of it saying view comment log, it says view data resolution workflow. So I created this record. I've spelled my name wrong on purpose. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to create an issue. So when you click on that speech bubble icon, now you have the data resolution workflow window. And instead of it just being a plain comment where I could just add a comment, now I have some options in how I want to deal with this, because what I'm doing now is I'm opening a data query and I'm going to say that there's something wrong with this data that needs to be fixed. So if there was nothing wrong with this data, I can just click verify data value. So for example, if I close this, if I go to my first name, which is spelled correctly, I can actually say that this is a verified data value. So I can go in and just say, I've checked this, it's okay. And so when somebody comes in down the road and they look at this data, they'll see this green check mark and they'll say, okay, well, the administrator of this project looked through this and they verified this data. So now my last name is spelled wrong. I want to open a query. So I'm going to click open query and I can assign it to anybody that I want that has data resolution permissions. So I'm just going to assign it to myself. But if I was just opening, like if Terry was the admin on this project and I was a data entry person, I would assign it to Terry. I'd be like, hey, Terry, you need to take a look at this. I think there might be something wrong with this data. And then you can also notify the user by email or REDCap Messenger. And so that way Terry will automatically know that there's something that has been assigned to him. And then I can add a comment. I think this last name is misspelled. And now I've opened a query for this. Now that there's a query, you'll see that it's got the little speech bubble, but there's a little red exclamation point icon with the speech bubble. So now if Terry came in, he would click on this, and now it keeps track of everything in an audit trail of what has been done to this data, or what has been done to this, what's been done so far for this data resolution workflow. And so Terry would look at this and he would say, okay, well, Manuel assigned this. He thinks the problem is the last name is misspelled. And then you can reply with a response and just say, whether it was corrected and data was missing, corrected, typographical error, corrected, wrong source used, verified, if Terry was like, nope, that's how his name is spelled, and he verifies it, or other. So we're going to cancel out of this. And I'm going to spell this correctly. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to say that it was corrected and it was a typographical error. And I could say fixed. You don't have to add a comment because you're correcting it. So you're saying it's fixed. Now, if Terry fixed that, like let's say you got this from a data entry spreadsheet or like a printout from a hospital with the MRN or data on it that way, you could upload this file as proof that you've corrected this. So if somebody's it's just extra protection to say, I did the due diligence, I looked through this person's medical record, I found this, discharge sheet that has their name on it and it's spelled S-Y-N-D-E-R, and it was correct, or that any kind of thing like that, you could upload a file just as additional proof of what you're saying here in this resolution workflow. So once we respond to the query, now it's saved, it's fixed, the icon changes, and then if we click on it again, now that we've corrected it, the only option we have now is to either close the query or send back for further attention. So if it happened to be that, the hospital actually misspelled their name, which has happened to my mom before. I've had to have them fix her name in paperwork, at one of her doctors. You could say, well, I've uploaded this and it shows that it's spelled this way. And I could be like, yeah, but that's not really how it's spelled. I've got this other information. So you could send it back for further attention, or you could close it. So if it is correct, Terry fixed it, my name is spelled correctly, everything is fixed, I just closed the query, and now everything is done. I guess now now a comment is required. Last name has been corrected. So now I'm closing it. So now that it's closed, you'll see that there's a little green check mark here, the tiniest green check mark ever. Now that's been taken care of. Now, if we go back to another field, I'm just going to show you this here to show you that when data is changed, it automatically unverifies the field. So if I go to my email address and I say that it's a verified data value, and then I just verify, I get the green check mark. Well, now if I change it to and I save it, now it's an unverified value. So I would have to go back in and verify it again. And you can see here that it tracks everything. So I made a data change, I verified it, I changed it again, and now it's de-verified. I'd have to verify it again. So anytime you make a change and save it, if it's verified, REDCap will automatically de-verify it for you. Now, you don't want to have to go through every one of these records to see if there is any data that is incorrect. You would want to be able to see it all at once. And so I have a couple of other records here, and each one of them has a problem. So I'm just going to go in and open up queries. Oh, let me go to this dashboard. So here I have somebody who's filled out that they check the box that they're over 18, but then they put today's date in. So I will open up a query to say, user or participant says they are over 18, but DOB is today's date. So I'm going to open a query for that one. I'm going to close that, and then I'm going to go back to the dashboard. And here we've asked if the person is taking medications, and they say yes, but then I ask if they can list their medications, and they left it blank. So I'm going to open up a query for this, and I'll say participant says they are taking meds, but did not list any. And this could be an instance where they meant to click no, and they didn't list anything, they weren't paying attention, or they are taking medications, but they didn't list any. So, there may be instances where it's not so cut and dry what the problem is for the person to fix. And so, depending on what your project's like, at least it gives you a place to document. So now we have a couple of problems that we need to fix. So what you want to do is you want to look at the resolve issues window. And so you can either click here, or you can click on data quality, and it'll take you to the same place. If you click on data quality, you just have to it'll take you to the data quality page, and then you have to click on the Resolve Issues tab, or you can go here directly. So just to let you know that you can go either way. So now this is the data quality or the data resolution window. And you can see here that I have 2 issues that are open, and they're listed out here. And you can filter these based on, you know, all status types, whether they're open and unresponded, responded, or closed. So let me just click all status types, because then you'll see the ones that I fixed here. And you can see here that this, for the email address, that wasn't really a data issue. It's just that I verified it, and then I de-verified it by changing the value, and then I verified it again. So even though it wasn't really an issue, it's still being tracked. Any changes to that verified status is being tracked and changed. You know, any changes are being tracked. And then you can also base it on different rules or fields. So if you set up data quality rules, you can filter on rules. There aren't any data quality rules here, so none are listed, but you can see here for the fields, everything is broken down by the fields that are available in the project. So if I only wanted to see things that are, you know, email address related, which is really helpful, because if you're cleaning your data and you just want to like, I just want to check email addresses because I'm about to send out a bunch of surveys. I want to make sure my email addresses are fine. And then you want to click on email because you're just filtering by email to make sure that the data that you're cleaning at that moment is just the email address. You don't care about anything else at the moment. You just want your email address. So that's a good way to filter this. You can also filter it based on who it was assigned by. And the nice thing about this is if I set up a query, so let's say that I want open and I only want date of birth and I only want it to be assigned to myself. I could have a query that's very specific. And you can see here that it's giving me a query URL. I can create that as a bookmark in a project. And so then in my bookmarks, I could just have that set to where I just click on that in the bookmark and it'll bring this page up with this window already filtered for me to just the things that I'm interested in. So you could do that as well. I'm just gonna leave this open as, I'll change this back to all fields and rules. So if I go here, I can fix things from here. So I can just click on the medication list comment. It brings up that same window that we were looking at before in the record status dashboard or the record view, but now it's just here in the workflow view. So, you know, this could just be something where you say that it was confirmed correct, and you could just say that participant is not actually taking meds, you know, however you want to do it. So you can respond to the queries here. And then if you click on this again, it's the same thing where you want to close the query, fixed by admin. So now I only have one issue open. So, you know, this seems like something that may be helpful if you're, if you have a clinical trial, you have multiple events, you have people coming in, you have multiple participants, and you're constantly having to make sure that your data is correct. And this is a good place to have all that information. So as you're cleaning data, you may notice something wrong with your data, but you may not be able to fix it right away. You just want to flag it. And, you know, that way when you have a day where you can just go through and clean, you can do that, and you'll have a place to view all that in one area. You could also look at the resolution metrics. So what this does is this shows you, gives you general statistics for the types of issues that you're seeing. If you want to see how long queries have been open. So for example, you know, if it's somebody's job to clean queries, look at tickets and clean queries, these data queries every week, you'd be able to see how long things have been left open. And so if somebody's not getting to the data queries, they're not cleaning the data quickly enough, you'll see how long things are left open. You could also see where the top queried fields are. So you may be able to flag like, oh, we're having a real big problem with people filling out this medication list. We may have to think about a better way of capturing that information, or somebody is always messing up their date of birth, or somebody's always messing up their email address. So you'll be able to flag these things, or at least see them, and know that that's something you need to keep in the back of your mind whenever you're cleaning data. Like, we got to check the email address because people mess this up all the time. And then, top 5 queried records. So if somebody is, if you have a participant that is constantly messing up their data, every time they enter data, you have to go in and clean it, or you have to go in and verify it and do all this other extra work. You'll be able to see this here by just like, this record ID is always having problems. Little things like that. The other nice thing is that, to go back to the resolve issues here, if we click on all status types, I don't think you have to filter it here, but you also have this option to export. So if we export it, it gives you all the information for those records that you've cleaned and then when open. So if you just wanted to export this, you had to email it to somebody. REDCap just gives you a way of viewing this data as a CSV. It also is nice because it gives you the data quality rule. So if there's a data quality rule that's violating, or that you're using to verify data, then you would be able to have that listed here. So you get to export this. So it's a really nice feature, I think, and it's more robust than just using the field comments, especially if you need to make sure that your data is being tracked and that you want to track that things have been fixed and verified, and have an audit trail for all of that stuff. It's a good feature. And the next thing I want to talk about is there's an external module that it's called the Data Resolution Workflow Tweaks. And 2 things that it does. One is it gives you a button in the record to just verify all your fields at once, instead of having to manually go through each field and verify it. And then 2, it would give you it gave you an option to export the data, and that is this button here. It was part of the feature. Now it's become obsolete in the external module because it has been moved into the native capability of REDCap. So really, there's only one thing that this module does now, which is gives you a button to verify all your data at once. So if we go to the data resolution tweaks, I'm just going to chart tweaks here. If you look at the documentation, it's pretty sparse. It just gives you, it just tells you that, it gives you this verify all labels button. And then this CSV exports is what was implemented as standard behavior in REDCap. So we're going to enable that. And it gives you the option to disable the verify all function, which I think is funny because that's the only reason you would enable the module to begin with. There's no point in enabling the module and then disabling that. I guess they left this here because at this point, when this was created, you had these 2 values. So maybe you only wanted to export, do CSV exports, and so you'd only want this function, or you only want this function. So it gave you the option of disabling one of the functions or the other. But now we don't really have to worry about any of these. So we're going to hit cancel, and I'm going to go to my record status dashboard again. And this one, we've gone through and we verified all the data. And instead of me having to go through manually and click through each one of these, I just go down here and I click verify all fields, and all visible fields that do not have a query will be marked as verified. Okay, and then I say okay, and now it goes through and verifies them all. And then, so that's a nice little thing, especially if you've got projects that have hundreds of fields. It's a way for you to glance at all the data. Of course, you still have to make sure all the data is correct, but instead of having to click through each one of those fields manually, you could just glance at all the data, verify it's all correct, and then just hit verify all fields. And now that entire record has been marked as verified. So if we go back to the resolve issues, I don't know if it'll pop up here. Yeah, so you can see here now it's verified everything for that record. So which is nice because it's still tied into that workflow audit trail. And let me see, I have a couple of comments here. Oh. Yeah, the verify all is definitely handy. So, and that's pretty much it. You know, once again, it's one of these features that is very simple to set up, very easy to use, and it's more you know, the more complicated your project is, the more complicated this will become because you know you'll have different ways of using this. But it's nice that these options are available. The other thing I was going to show you is let me open up. So let me just reopen a query here. The other thing here is that you can add other. So this is what I like too, is that it gives you a couple of options, and then if you just say other, then you can type in whatever comment you want. So I think that's a really good thing that you can flag things on. This gives you a little more flexibility in what you're tracking. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the data resolution workflow. Does anybody have any questions or anything they want me to go through in a little more detail?